Hello, my name is Tolg, and I exist, therefore I think too much. I am going to read part 11 of the introduction to The Mirror of Simple Souls by Marguerite Porete. The introduction itself is written by Ellen Babinski. Ellen Babinski herself translated, from what I understand, translated the original work from French to English. And in the introduction, I'm having a very difficult time understanding if maybe some of the things got lost in translation, how some other languages have words that just don't have a direct translation into English or vice versa. So there's that. And then also, I'm taking forever to read through this. Generally, I guess. And I cuss. So, if you don't like cussing, no one's begging you to watch this. Thank you if you are watching this. I appreciate it. I do relate my opinions, so if you're watching this in hopes of having someone just straight read it, I'm sorry, I won't do that. Also, I got to something like chapter 30 and then started reading the introduction to answer questions. Now I feel stuck reading the introduction. And that is where it is. So that also explains, why it's so unorganized if you go back in and try to find the beginning of it. Good luck. So, the majority of this is just repetitive, and if I were to explain where I've been, it's where I've always been, where I left off. So once the soul begins to understand the nature of the God soul. Okay, sorry. That is the first time the term God soul has been used. So, and it's not defined after that, so I am assuming Babinski threw in God soul there as a means of properly representing the quote-unquote annihilated soul that Porete constantly references. The annihilated soul is opting out of being alive in the safest way possible and letting God operate through you instead, thus making you the holiest of holies because you are essentially not you. Which then, what do they call that? A logical fallacy? If you are not operating yourself, then you cannot be holy. You're not perfect because you're not you. Ta-da! So yeah, that's what I think she means by God soul. So, once the soul begins to understand the nature of the God-soul relation... God-soul relation? So the God to the soul? Whatever. By means of the dialectic. And the dialectic is, Hey, bud, are you having a difficult time walking? It was very weird of you. Okay. I'm gonna go check on my cat. He just decided instead of walking a straight path to walk around essentially the entire walkway. So I'll stop this here, put it on the charger, and get back to it. Bye-bye. Okay, I'm back from outer space to see that sad look upon your face. Dialectic. She, in the dialectic, she says, Lord is good and I am not. And essentially, because I am not good, I understand how good the Lord is in contrast to me, the worst of all sinners. Wasn't that, Oh, the mass murderer. What was his name? I always get it confused. It's either Saul or it's Lot. One of them. Most wretched soul. Real fucked up story, isn't it? Could have two confused. Like I just said, I confuse two pretty constantly. But he was the only one worth saving in the fall of Sodom. And then because he did some fuck shit, everybody confuses the sin of sodomy with what he actually did, being the holiest soul in the whole place. But the place was getting fucked over by God because everybody was greedy and hoarding money. The sin of Sodom was valuing money over life. And so when the angel came to town, greed and gluttony, that's what it was. Participating in so much comfort that you lost sight of general morality or ethics. Just didn't give a shit about anything but your comfort, essentially. And money. So when the angel came to town, or angels, was it? Lot? Saul? One of them. Decided that his daughters ought to be prostituted to the whole town. He threw them in the square to be fucked by the town in the stead of the two angels that were so beautiful he couldn't leave them alone with the townspeople for fear that they would rape the angels. So, he gave them his two daughters to be raped instead. So then he begs the angels, while his daughters are getting raped in the town square, he begs the angels, please, can we save these people? It'd be so awful if I were to be the only one to be able to escape. They say, fuck you, no. And then tell him how to escape. So he does, and he tells his wife, hey, you turn around your salt. She turns around, and part of me thinks she did it on purpose, living with this man who just let her two daughters get raped by the whole town. So they flee to a cave. And in this cave, after his two daughters were raped, he decides, being the last remaining of Sodom, that he needs to maintain his bloodline. So he rapes his daughters and has them give birth to his grandchildren and their children. As far as the most wretched soul, I think he won the lottery. Still saved by God, though, right? So anyways, that's the dialectic. I suck, and therein you are good. Her understanding grows by means of illumination as she begins to comprehend the intimate relation between her own wretchedness and God's goodness. She cannot have his goodness except through her wretchedness. That doesn't make sense. And since the soul cannot lose her wretchedness, yes, the soul can lose her wretchedness. She cannot lose his goodness. That makes no fucking sense at all. That makes no fucking sense at all. To lose something would first mean that you own it. All of this is stating that she cannot own goodness, let alone God's goodness. All she owns is her own wretchedness. Then it makes a claim kind of out of left field. You're gonna have a difficult time, bud. Alright, have fun. Where she says she cannot lose her wretchedness, and I don't know that I back that at all. That's the part that doesn't make any sense. Especially if she's claiming that, by annihilating herself, she somehow becomes good because her will becomes God's will, in that she wills God's will. Wouldn't that be the act of losing her wretchedness? By the argument of what is most goodly that a human could possibly do is die unto themselves. And I'm not saying that myself. I don't back that, but that is exactly what she says. This understanding moves the soul along to even greater understanding. I don't think so. The soul is given to understand, is it, by divine light, that she has been accorded a free will in order to will the divine will alone. That's not a free will, then. In addition, she understands that her will has separated itself from the divine will to will independently of God. That's powerful. And that her will must now depart from itself. It cannot if her will is God's will. In order for her to return to her true home. Death. In this showing from divine light, the soul understands where she was when God made all things from nothing. Well, she was in the nothing. Why would she need to know that? That's just kind of like generally understood. It's kind of a duh thing to say. You were in the nothing. Why would that matter to you? And so she is certain that her true nature is nothing. No. Nothing is nothing. You were in the nothing if you were made from nothing, but nothing is nothing. You became something from nothing. That does not make you nothing. That makes you something. And then, to just bring it home, the argument. There is now mentioned a new word. No-thingness. Okie dokie. At the same time, she sees that she removed her will from God in one sole moment of consent to sin. Which moment was that? Which sin was it? Was it the sin of existence? Because that's what it's seeming like. Unless she just refuses to mention the sin she participated in, the one sin out of the many sins that do in fact exist, according to the Catholic Church. Did you know? I may have mentioned this in a prior video, I probably didn't, I don't know. Hey bud, why are you being weird? I took the lid off his litter box because I was cleaning it. And then he stumbled. I am so concerned right now. But I don't know what to do. Okay, bye. So, yeah. Right, the Catholic Church created the 7 deadly sins. They felt that it would help control the peoples, specifically control the peoples, to better keep them away from transgressions against the 10 commandments. The 7 deadly sins were a creation of the church to keep better control of the peoples. At the same time, she sees that she removed her will from God in one sole moment of consent to sin. In this sense, she understands who she is by nature and who she has become through sin. What? By nature, the soul is quote-unquote nothing. Nope. Soul became something once it was created. Hey, are you okay, buddy? Bud. Do you need to lay down? We have weird times in this household. Among many. Lost all the bookmarks. The sense of having been created by God from nothing. That's nonsensical. So it's not in the sense because there's no sense there. No senseness. Aha! Through sin, by willing independently from God. Wow, that alone is a sin. That's a lot of power. Again, how do you will independently from God when God decided to create you with free will? That alone makes any will that you have under the notion of free will God's will. You cannot will independently from God if God is everything. Also, what the fuck? Suddenly, the soul has become another thing because it willed independently from God. Oh, what is that? Alchemism. That is like the goal of all alchemical studies, isn't it? To like transform the soul into something else. One being among other beings. Well, that bit of the sentence doesn't actually make sense whether you pair it with the sentence or not. Everybody is one being among other beings, but that doesn't make you another thing altogether. The soul, by removing, or as Marguerite says, stealing her will from God. Very powerful individual. Is now in debt to God. Jesus Christ. But she cannot pay the debt. Okay. For she is... Wow. This sounds like a loan shark. For she has nothing with which to pay except her own wretchedness, which of course will not suffice. Oh my God, you speak for God? God can be satisfied only by the power of divine goodness. Well, this has been a very tumultuous night, so I'm going to end it there. Again, sorry for... Right, buddy. Sorry for me.